I think we can all agree on that we're broke.
In the red, upside down, underwater. You can call it whatever you want, but the city of Houston's bills are outstripping its revenue. So says Mayor John Whitmire in brutally honest fashion after looking beneath the hood of the city's finances post-Sylvester Turner. I mentioned the former mayor because just a few months ago, the story he was telling was much different.
Instead of $160 million in a hole, we'll give you a surplus of nearly $420 million.
Clearly two versions of bookkeeping here, one a fantasy, the other a reality, which Mayor John Whitmire says will demand decisive and potentially unpopular measures.
I don't like a 5% cut now, but you have to make tough decisions. And the folks put me in this position to make tough decisions, and I'm going to do my job.
Panel, Whitmire says all options are on the table, including clawing back sales tax revenue from Metro and tapping the coffers of the so-called tax increment reinvestment zones. And with that, I'm going to go straight to Bill King, who has written extensively about the city's financial condition and looked under the hood, some would say.
Yeah, I hate to think of myself as a told you so kind of person, but this has been obvious to anybody following the city's finances for well over a decade. The you-know-what would have hit the fan in the last administration had it not been for this incredible influx of federal dollars. That's why Sylvester was able to say that he left with a surplus, because that was leftover COVID and Harvey money. Look, the city made 3 decisions in the last, several decades that have brought us to this point. One is in the 1970s, we gave away half of our sales tax to Metro. Now, you can argue about how effective that's been. They spent $3 billion on light rail that is performing horribly. That money could have been better spent by the city of Houston. We've given away a couple $100 million of our money to the TERS. Some of that money's spent okay, a lot of it's not. Look at the silver line on Post Oak. And then the third thing is, Sylvester Turner made a decision when we had pension reform teed up that he was going to continue defined benefit plans indefinitely into the future. Private sector gave that up, decades ago. Those 3 things are what have the city in this financial condition. It's the reason that we underinvest in roads and water and everything that we do. And it's going to be a very tough problem to get out of.
Charles Blaine, you keep a close eye on City Hall. This is not a surprise to you.
No, and I'm going to say, because every mayor when they're leaving paints a rosy picture. In 2014, I looked at the budget that Parker put out in her budget statement. It said, I set the city on a stable financial path. And we know months later, pension was an issue, and Turner had to deal with that when he came in. But I'm going to echo a lot of what Bill said, because he's been saying it since I was born, pretty much. But, coming to the tax, we often talk about how difficult these past couple of years have been for the firefighters, which is true, but it's been equally as difficult for the public. Cost of living has increased and services have not kept pace. And so why are we not looking at things prior to looking at money from the public, like changing pension plans for new employees, like immediately going after the Metro money, selling some of the city's artwork, because they have a lot of artwork at all of these different facilities. They should be looking at the waste, fraud, and abuse that's in the city and cutting there before they come to taxpayers, because we need to be shown a little bit of goodwill, because it's been hard for us as well.
Bill, real quickly before I go to Chow, it's not as if the city of Houston didn't have increased revenue year after year after year after year. Is that correct?
It is. Most recently, though, it's mostly been in the water department, because we dramatically raised water rates, which has that system in pretty good shape. One thing that's confusing about the city is they're discrete funds. What John's talking about is the general fund, which is in bad shape.
Okay, Chow, you've covered this town, you've lived in this town, you know it like the back of your hand. I mean, how do you react as a citizen to this news?
Listen, I live in the city of Houston like some of my colleagues here. I get, trash service, waste services. What I wonder about is, as we look at the decline in the city of Houston, right, in the population, what does that mean by revenue? I mean, I'm not a math expert by any stretch of the imagination, but the numbers don't seem to add up. And that really concerns me. And then when you go to the city and you utilize services and the services aren't working well, are you going to be encouraged to move to this city and be a citizen? That's really alarming and very concerning for any of us who live in the city. The other thing I wonder about is the inefficiencies of this city and the city services. Why not look at a department by department look, which I think the mayor is suggesting, and really look at the inefficiencies? So I'm sure you can probably go through department to department and say, listen, let's cut the fat here, let's cut the fat here, so that it doesn't affect taxpayers.
Gary Pollan, almost as long as Bill, maybe longer, you've been calling out these financial deficiencies.
Yeah, it's been a problem for a long time. I do want to say for Mayor Whitmire, he inherited not a warm bed. He actually inherited a disaster area. And Sylvester Turner's nickname should be changed to Pinocchio because he just lied over and over again about the finances. But I agree with the rest of the panel. The first thing we need to do is find where the money is first, as opposed to the typical liberal answer to every problem: raise taxes on the people. The people are already paid enough. They're already underserved, and it needs to be dealt with. There are resources available. There are inefficiencies, and the money needs to be crawled back. In addition, we're the only city in the state that doesn't have a major city doesn't have a garbage fee, so I would predict that's coming.
Holly, you write for a statewide website that covers statewide. Your perception of the finances as John Whitmire moves further into his first year?
Sure, and I don't live in the city of Houston, so I do look at it from an outsider's perspective. But looking at the economics, no one is surprised. Only the most naive would believe Mayor Turner when he said that there would be this surplus, because we all heard the controller say that they were plugging budget holes with those COVID relief funds. And not only were they plugging budget holes, they were spending on all kinds of things, such as, gun buybacks with no questions asked that made no sense whatsoever. But I'm glad Bill brought up the issue of the pensions, because that is an issue across the nation in some of these urban areas where they have these defined benefit pension plans that are unsustainable over the long term. We can look to cities like Chicago and New York to see what happens with that.